Good morning, everyone. I'm Maria Volpe. I'm a professor at John Jay College of Criminal Justice and the director of the Dispute Resolution Program. This breakfast is co-sponsored each month by the Association for Conflict Resolution of Greater New York and the City University of New York Dispute Resolution Center at John Jay College of Criminal Justice. Since 9/11, 2001, we met in person at John Jay College. Since April 2020, we have been meeting online virtually. All of these breakfasts are recorded and posted at www.acr-gny.org. So you can listen to any of the previous breakfasts since the pandemic started. We are very fortunate to have a wonderful team each month that puts together these breakfasts. I'm so happy to be joined by Julie Denny, Chuck Newman, Matthew Latimer, and Nikki Borofsky, and more recently by Emily Skinner. There's a lot of work that goes on behind the scenes, even though it looks easy every month, and just delighted that everyone is on board every month to make these breakfasts happen. As far as our immediate future, we will be continuing virtually. We are not permitted to hold large events on campuses yet, so look forward to seeing you each month for the foreseeable future. And this morning, I am so delighted that I have a very dear colleague and friend as our presenter, Bathabile Mthombeni, who I've known, it feels like forever. Thank you, Bathabile, for being here. I'm so looking forward to having her. Usually, I turn it over to Julie to do the introductions. Julie is in California, and it's a bit early there. So delighted that today I am going to turn it over to Matthew Latimer, who will be doing the introductions to our speaker. Matthew.
Hey, thanks so much, Maria. So Bathabile K.S. Mthombeni, JDMS, is the University Ombudsman for Binghamton University. She's also a coach and mediator and the founder of Untangled Resolution, a company that provides mediation, workshop and process facilitation, leadership, coaching, and organizational development services. She is the founder of Come Abide Here, LLC, providing racial intelligence and racial mindset coaching, training, and dialogue facilitation services, primarily to white members of leadership teams and DEI committees. Bathabile is passionate about helping people to learn how to communicate and resolve their differences. She's taught classes in negotiation and conflict management and dispute resolution at the graduate and undergraduate levels. She currently offers online workshops and courses related to fostering dialogue about controversial issues and developing connections across differences. Over the past 18 years, Bathabile has helped thousands of individuals to untangle their dilemmas and identify their best paths. She strives to create unique and transformative experiences for her clients that reveal the essence of their truths. Bathabile earned her AB in sociology, cum laude from Princeton University, her JD from Columbia Law School, and her coaching certificate in MS in leadership and organizational development from the Naveen Jindal School of Management at the University of Texas at Dallas. She is a dedicated human companion to her canine companions, Mushu, Manla, Carmel, Bambi, and Bella. She's an avid yarn crafter, podcaster, YouTube enthusiast, and a singer, songwriter, guitarist who's performed on New York City subway platforms and once lived in a tent. With that, I will give you Bathabile.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate that introduction, Matthew. And I do want to say that for me, the most important part of all of that is that I am canine or a human companion to 5 dogs. So I'm really, really glad to be here today. I thank Maria so much for this opportunity to talk with you. I do miss us being able to meet in person. I remember how wonderful that felt, and it really was being amongst friends. And I'm hoping that that is the sense that we are able to maintain, even though we are on Zoom and in virtual reality. So I'm hoping that we still retain that sense of things. I'm thankful again to Maria and the Roundtable Breakfast organizers for inviting me to share my experiences as an ombuds with you. It's really hard for me to believe that it's been 16 years since I entered the profession. The 18 years includes the time of my coming into the mediation profession, but in terms of being an ombuds, it's been about 16 years, and I'm happy for a chance to share what I have learned over the years. And I also recognize my ombuds colleagues who are here, and I'm really excited to see as well. And later on in our time together, I'm hoping to hear them chime in and add to our conversation about what it means to be an ombuds. My intent for our time together is that by the end of our conversation, you will know more about what the qualities and qualifications for an organizational ombuds are from my perspective, what the role of organizational ombuds is and is not, a little bit about how to search for an ombuds job, and we will address a case study, a brief case study about a dilemma that an ombuds can face. But first, I have a question, and I would love for you to put your answers in the chat, and then perhaps we can have one or two people raise their hands, if you want to come forward and share your own perspective. But I'm curious, for those of you who dream of being an ombuds, what inspires you in that direction? What gives you passion for wanting to be an ombuds? So I'm going to look and see what we're getting in the chat. And then if a couple of people want to raise their hands, whoever wants to raise their hands, and I'll call on a couple of people and see what your answers are, if you want to be an ombuds. Okay, so I see some answers here. Alex says helping people solve their problems informally, which is really great. Alex, I've had some conversations over the last few weeks with folks about the difference, the distinction between formal processes and informal processes, and what's available in informal processes. So to aid people to live a more fulfilling life, that's Harvey. Jess says, Ombuds seems to be an institutional commitment to conflict resolution, which is an exciting prospect. Right, yes. The opportunity to empower visitors to clarify issues and consider options. That, Eleanor, you've got it. That's the core of what we do as ombuds. Astrid says, I would love to play the role figuring out the systemic issues and also helping one-on-one. And Astrid, you are also identifying something that is specific about being an ombuds, which is being able to bridge the gap between the individual and the systemic. An ombuds needs to be able to have a viewpoint on both. So you're getting both the bird's eye view and the forest and the trees view, the detailed view. So yes, Beverly says to help organizations live their values in their conflict resolution methods and systems. And Beverly, you are anticipating our case study actually very well. So I'm glad you've brought that up. Harvey says being a bridge to a new beneficial consensus. Yes, and that is true of the ombuds role. We certainly do serve as bridges. So I appreciate the answers that I'm receiving here. I know that you perhaps have not had much of an opportunity to think about it, but I'd like you to think about it. For those of you who are interested in the ombuds role, to think about what really is inspiring you to take on the role, because I will tell you that when you get into the thick of things as an ombuds, it is important that this is not just a job for you. The requirements of the role are such that it really needs to be a calling. From my perspective, I really believe that it goes beyond being a job, even beyond being a profession, but that it really is a calling. So as Matthew mentioned, I've been the University Ombudsman at Binghamton University since 2015. Prior to that, I was the Associate Ombuds Officer at Columbia University from 2006 to 2010. And I mention that because it gives me an opportunity to thank and give recognition to a few key people. So I'd first like to start with Janice Tootie Jackson, and I'm hoping she's here to hear me say thank you. It is she who introduced me to the world of negotiation. I took her negotiation seminar in the first semester of my third year in law school and finally found my purpose. It was in her class that I finally found my purpose. And so I'm really grateful to her for what she offered to me as a mentor, and as an instructor in negotiation. And then I'd like to thank Carol Liebman, and I think I did see you there in the list of people who are here. Carol, oh my goodness. So Carol is my introduction to mediation. And she really is who has made me the mediator that I am. I will to this day be sitting in mediation and listening to what people are saying, thinking about where to go next and what strategies to use to guide the conversation. And I will literally hear Carol in my voice, or sorry, Carol's voice in my head. As I think about, what are the core principles and the fundamentals of mediation, and remind myself of that as I am mediating. And it is Carol who liberated me from Wall Street and facilitated my shift into the ombuds world. So I did not know about the ombuds profession until Carol gave me a call. I was an associate at a law firm on Wall Street. I was a litigation associate. And Carol called me up and said, you know what, I found the perfect job for you. You've got to apply for this job. And so I did. And then I get a chance to thank Marcia Wagner, who was my first mentor in ombudsing, and her foundational training in ombudsing has kept me in really good stead in all of these years. One of the things to recognize about being an ombuds, and we'll talk about this a little bit more in depth as the conversation continues, is that it can be really complex and politically dicey. We're supposed to stay out of politics, but at the same time, we are helping people navigate politics. And so the training that I received from Marcia in that regard has kept me out of trouble for all of these years. So I'm thankful for that. And then of course, I thank Maria, who has been a marvelous mentor for me and to me over a great number of years. I can't say enough about what a wonderful mentor she is. If you have been mentored by Maria, you are lucky indeed. And so I'm thankful for that. And then finally, I want to thank the members of the East Coast Ombuds group, which I know that several of you are here. I saw Judith and didn't get a chance to really go through the list of participants to see who else is here, but I'm sure that you're there. And I'm really happy that you are here, and I'm looking forward to you chiming in later on when we get into the Q&A portion of things. But they too have been an invaluable community of support to me over the years in my practice in ombuds. At Binghamton University, I'm a solo ombuds, and we're going to talk, I would like to talk a little bit more about that. The challenges of being a solo ombuds and the benefits of having at least an associate ombuds, being more than an office of one. But at Binghamton, I serve a core community of over 22,000 students, faculty, and staff. But then my office is also open to visitors to the university, to parents, community members, and basically to the general public. So, if you think about it in those terms, the population that I serve, it's kind of immeasurable, potentially. But really, the core community is about 22,000 people. And anyone with a concern related to being at Binghamton University can come and talk to me about their concerns. I'm also an external ombuds to a small company that has fewer than 20 people. And that is an interesting opportunity as well to discuss. I know Kira is here and she's an external ombuds, and I'm looking forward to you also chiming in the question and answer portion about the specifics of being an external, the opportunities of being an external ombuds. But that's something that I've also added to my roster of services. So I want to take a moment to talk about the qualities and the qualifications for being an ombuds. And when I first started, it was an interesting thing. It was interesting to see from, what a wide variety of professions and trainings and so forth that people came to the ombuds profession from. And I still kind of go back and forth on this. I think that it is important to have really good, solid mediation training. I find that having coach training is really important, and having experience in life is really important, though. So there's this balance between the professional training that one has and then also temperament. And I think that between the two, it might be, aptitude and temperament that are more important than the specific profession that you come from. You can learn the specifics of the ombuds role, practicing to the standards of practice and to the code of ethics of the International Ombudsman Association, or we just rebranded actually, so it's the International Ombuds Association. You can learn all of that stuff, but the application of it really requires a particular kind of mindset. And we'll get a little bit more into what that is later on in our conversation as well. But from my perspective, in my experience, the role of ombuds really describes a sacred trust between the service provider and the community that they serve. I really see it that way. Sometimes I describe it as being sort of a secular priest to one's community. And there's an ombuds I once heard describe the role as being the holder of the people's tears. You're going to be seeing people at their most vulnerable, their most distressed. Sometimes the ombuds is a place of first resort, and sometimes it's a place of last resort. And so being available as a source of empowerment, a source of strength to people, while balancing your commitment to being impartial and acting independently is really important. And so understanding that relationship that you have with the community that you serve is really important. I think it's important to also talk about what the role is and what it is not, right? So it is a job that is done best, I think, in the shadows. It happens often without recognition. I mentioned that there's this precarious balancing act that one has in terms of keeping the principles, the core principles of ombuds practice, which are confidentiality, being informal, impartial, and independent. And I think that the ombuds is doing their job best when it looks like the ombuds is doing nothing. So you're the chief diplomat of the organization that you serve. Again, it's work that is often done behind the scenes. And I'll talk a little bit more about why that is as we go on. I think that it's essential that one love people, that it's really important to have a core orientation of love for people in order to do this work, because again, you're going to be seeing people and working with people who are perhaps not at their best. And so being able to focus on the core humanity of each person, no matter what it seems that they have done, is really important. Providing empathy is at the center of the role of being ombuds, and I think that often gets kind of forgotten. And I'll talk about how that plays into what I do as I turn into being a little bit more specific about how I practice as an ombuds. So I'm going to give you the introduction to the Ombuds office that I give whenever somebody is new to my office. And that, I think, will help to explain some of what I've been talking about in terms of principle. Now we're going to get practical, okay? So the preamble that I give goes like this. There are 4 things that are important to understand about how the Ombudsman's office works. My office is confidential, informal, impartial, and independent. And I'll take a moment to explain what each of those means in this context. Being confidential means that I won't talk to anybody else about your concerns without your permission. I might take notes. There's an intake sheet that folks usually fill out. If you bring me hard copy documents and don't ask for them back, eventually all of that gets shredded. So I don't keep any records, and everything that I do is off the record. My office is not an office of notice to the university or to the institution. It depends on who you're working for, but for me, it's the university. And that means that if there's ever a question about when the university knew about something, when something has been reported to the university, coming to me does not mean that anything has been reported. So we can talk about where you can report something if you need to do that, but understand that talking to me does not mean that you have reported anything to the university. There's one exception to confidentiality, and that is if there's an imminent risk of serious harm to self or to others. In that case, I am required to disclose what I have heard. Other than that, I don't have a duty to report, and I cannot be compelled to divulge what has been shared with me to the university. To help facilitate confidentiality, I ask that you not send me email with details about your situation, since email is not confidential and it creates a record that's really hard to get rid of. I said that my office is informal, and that means that I don't take part in any formal processes. The grievance process, disciplinary process, on campus or off campus, if there's litigation, for example. I wouldn't be a witness for or against anybody. I'm not providing any documents. I don't keep any anyway. I wouldn't be interviewed. And I ask that by using the services of my office, you would agree that you would not bring my office into a formal process. And then I ask for agreement. What I can do is to help you understand to help you understand what processes are available, what the policies and the procedures are. And if you're in a situation where you're part of a formal process and it seems as though policies and processes are not being honored, I can help by inquiring informally. I can make an informal inquiry to see what is happening and see whether I can help to restore the process. It is my role to be impartial, although I prefer the term multi-partial, because I do care about the needs and the interests of everybody who's involved. That said, I don't decide who's right or who's wrong. I don't have a say in the final outcome, and I cannot be an advocate for a specific person to get a specific result. But I can help you to develop advocacy for yourself, to find resources for advocacy on campus and to a smaller extent off campus. And where I see that there is a pattern, if it's a systemic issue, I can bring that issue up on my own to the appropriate people while keeping concerns for confidentiality in mind. And while I cannot be an advocate for a specific person to get a specific result, I am an advocate for fairness, for civility, and mutual respect. Finally, my office is independent, so I'm not affiliated with any other office on campus. I report directly to the president of the university, mainly for administrative purposes. I don't discuss specific cases with the president unless I'm given permission to, and it's appropriate, since we do try to resolve issues at the lowest level possible. So I wouldn't be escalating anything up to the president unless all other avenues have been exhausted, and he, in this case, it's a he, were the appropriate person to go to. So I thank you for sitting through all of that, but that gives you an understanding, and encapsulated in that statement, which I learned from Marcia Wagner. Encapsulated in that statement is the description of the Ombuds role. And so I give that preamble so that people understand what they can expect when I am acting in my role and what it is that I don't do as well. And so what is really important is understanding that the ombuds is not an advocate. The organizational ombuds is not an advocate. And here is where that distinction between what we call organizational ombuds and classical ombuds, which the classical ombuds just means being an ombudsman. That's where this distinction is really important. So for a lot of people, their introduction to the ombuds world might come through a person who's a classical ombuds who is an advocate. And originally that's what the role was that it was a person who was a representative of the people to the government and who would investigate and help to root out waste and abuse and fraud. And so that advocacy role was really core. But in the organizational ombuds role, it is not an advocacy role in the sense of advocating for a specific person to get a specific result. It is more about empowering people to be able to advocate for themselves, right? So, as I said, the ombuds is the organization's chief internal diplomat, from my perspective again, and the role requires dexterity, flexibility, versatility, the ability to empathize with anyone without attachment to the person or to the outcome. It requires patience, discretion, bravery, and a fanatical commitment to fairness. Although there is the question as to who gets to define that, right? But being committed to fairness is really important. I have had back-to-back appointments. If you want to get a chance, an idea of what that looks like in practice. The one case that I remember that I think truly tested my abilities as an ombuds is when I had back-to-back appointments where the first person that I met with was distressed about an upcoming student conduct case. This was a student. And in this case, that student was the complainant and was the survivor of a sexual assault. And then it turned out that my very next appointment was with the student who had been accused of that sexual assault. And so being able to give to each of those people the same level of care and consideration and commitment to doing your job is important. With both of them, my posture was the same. It was acknowledging the awfulness of their present situation, helping them sort through the issues and recognize their priorities, understand what the policies and the procedures were, what to expect, providing answers to the questions that they had about all of that. For both of those people in these back-to-back appointments that I had with them, that was the service that I was expected to provide. So it's very important to understand that as ombuds, one does not take sides in terms of any particular issue, but that we take sides in the service of principles. Okay. So in the role of ombuds, your primary purpose is to first empower the person to their own advocacy by providing them a safe forum where they can express themselves, have their experiences validated, get help defining and organizing their priorities, and understand what options are available for them to exercise in the service of resolving their concerns. The president of Binghamton, Harvey Stenger, once was at a party. He hosted a holiday party where I was attending, and he introduced me to a new professor. And he said, "Oh, this is Bathabile, our ombudsman." And the professor said, "What's that?" And I started to explain what my role is. And President Stenger stepped in and said, "Oh, she keeps everybody calm." So there is that sense, again, that the service that the Ombuds provides is to allow a place for people to come when they are at their most distressed, when they feel that they've lost all hope, they're not sure where to go, it feels as though all the powers are lined up against them. And it is one's role then to help folks to better understand their situation, understand that they do have options, understand how to exercise those options, and to make the wisest decisions that are possible for them to make about their own situation. All right, so there is opportunity to talk about finding an ombuds job, but I've been talking for a while and I want an opportunity to check in with folks and see what questions that you have. Okay, so I see Harvey, you have your hand up. If you would unmute.
Thank you. Let's use that sexual abuse example.
A lot of ideas which are going on by myself.
If I may.
Thank you. Yes.
What got me as a framework to do this was principles, plus you had a certain methodology that you had to follow, or that a network of not principles, but of methods that you were able to use as your own scaffolding in this thing. And if I may also, that it seems to be a situational ombudsman rather than the political ombudsman. So that with your I'm getting a shape of what it is too. And that principle is so much more. That's the overarching thing that gives everything stability, isn't it?
It definitely is, Harvey, and I appreciate you bringing this up because I find for myself, I don't want to talk for everybody else, but sometimes it is very difficult to explain to people what the role is because it is so many things. It encompasses so many considerations and skill sets, and one must understand the policies of the institution, but then be able to speak to the person who is before them. It really is a role that requires a lot, and like I said, dexterity. So I appreciate you bringing that up, and I'm glad we are having an opportunity to, to sort of unpeel the layers of this kind of, complicated onion, if you will. Thank you for that. Javi, I see your hand is up.
Good morning.
Good morning.
I placed my question in the chat, but I will repeat it here. I am actually fairly acquainted with ombuds and so forth, and I would desperately love to get a real one at my own institution, as distinct from what some academic institutions do, which is, I'm sorry, a board faculty member steps up for 1 year, and then the next board faculty member steps up for the next year. I mean, a real one. Here's a question though. You mentioned sexual harassment. While you were talking about that, I looked at my own institution's policy regarding mandatory reporting by Title IX, Title IX things, which is largely focused on sexual harassment. And it says, quote unquote, the only university employees not considered to be mandatory reporters are those who hold a valid license in a profession for which my state's law recognizes a confidential relationship between them and their clients or patients, which would make you a mandatory reporter. How do you structure your office so that you are not required to report immediately any communication regarding sexual harassment?
So this is an excellent question. And it is, of all the issues that have hit the ombuds profession, it is one that I think has caused us the most consternation. And, I don't want to misquote the years, but I think it was around 2011, 2012, that this first became an issue where the Department of Education brought forward the concept of mandated reporting, which I support. I actually support in principle, the policy of mandated reporting. It takes out of the responsibility and consideration of people like professors and other people who are likely to hear these reports, the decision as to whether or not to forward it. They don't have to think about, is it true? Is it serious enough? Is it, they're not the ones who are trying to make those decisions. All they have to do, and all the only consideration they have, is to report. However, the ombuds profession piped up, and we have been involved for a number of years in a pretty pitched effort to help the Department of Education understand that it is important to carve out exceptions. And so, to my understanding, unless this is very new, Javi, and I'm glad you're pointing it out because I'd like to look at it, what happens on my campus is that our Title IX officer has recognized that my office, along with our counseling office, are accepted from that policy. So I'm not considered a campus security authority. And we've made the arguments about that. I don't make policy. I don't participate in any of the things that would make one considered to be a campus security authority. And it is, again, representing my perspective, but one that I think is shared by many other people. It is really crucial that there be at least one place on campus that someone be able to go where they can confess, if you will, and receive good counsel. And I use the word counsel delicately because we don't counsel people. We help people think through their alternatives and so forth, but they can receive, careful help considering what their options are without fear of it being reported. So I'm glad you brought that up. It is a big deal. We're still working it through, but it is something that, I have to take into consideration anytime one of these cases comes forward. Yeah, thank you. Let's see here. Jess asks, where does the salary for an ombudsman come from? How are conflict checks completed, and what happens if the ombudsman has a conflict with the parties? Is the issue referred externally? Great questions. Okay, so where does the salary for the ombuds come from? Well, the institution pays my salary. And so people then say, well, how can I trust that you're going to be impartial? They butter your bread. So why wouldn't you take the considerations of the institution first? And the answer for me to that is that I operate under a charter agreement. So this is really important for people who are functioning ombuds, who are practicing as ombuds, to make sure that you have a charter agreement with the organization that you serve that is based on the code of ethics and the standards of practice as put out by the International Ombuds Association. And when you have a well-crafted agreement, then the understanding is there that it is your job to be impartial, and it is your job to maintain confidentiality and to follow the core requirements of ombuds practice. And so I take that very seriously. If I violate that, I'm not doing my job, and that's when I can get fired. So I tell people, in terms of getting fired, the reasons for which I could get fired would be for violating the code of ethics and the standards of practice, right? And then, of course, it's up to the person to believe whether or not I'm telling the truth. And I think that is something that is established over time. The reason to trust the ombuds is something that is established over time. So I've had the blessing of 7 years at Binghamton, which has allowed me to establish my reputation. And so I think that on that basis, people are able to trust that I'm actually going to do what I say I'm going to do. In terms of conflict checks, so the standards of practice are that the Ombuds Office is confidential, informal, impartial, and independent. And the independence leg of that is what I think would address your conflict checks question, Jess. There are to be no conflicts. So one of the more challenging parts of this job for me, being where I am, the location where I am, is that the way that I was taught, the Ombuds does not have social relationships with anyone who is affiliated with the organization that they serve. So I'm friends with no one. I don't go to anybody's birthday parties. We don't go to dinner. They don't come to my house. I do not have, social connections with anyone who is affiliated with the university. And that is specifically to avoid conflicts. So, if I have a conflict with one of the parties, it would be perhaps because they came to me for a service and were upset with the service that I provided, perhaps, and they want somebody else. And so that is where a couple of things. This gives me an opportunity to talk about why it is important for organizations to have at least 2 ombuds. So I am in a solo office. There are reasons for that. That are, sort of beyond my control and influence, but it's not ideal. I'm going to come out and say that it's not ideal. It would be better if I had at least an associate ombuds working with me. And when I say at least an associate, I'm not trying to imply that being an associate is somehow, less effective or less important. But to address what you bring up, Jess, I think it would be really great for there to be at least 2 people, so that if one person somehow gets conflicted out, there is the option of the other person. But I also have a fantastic network of ombuds on the East Coast. So I mentioned ECOG, the East Coast Ombuds Group. And there have been occasions where I thought that perhaps there was going to be some kind of a conflict, and one of my colleagues would then be available and I could refer them to one of my colleagues at a different institution. It would be more challenging because they don't know Binghamton the way that I do, but I can help them, if they need to get quick briefing on our policies and procedures and so forth, so that they can provide informed help to the person who's coming to meet with them. But that is there as an option if for some reason, which has not occurred yet in the 7 years that I've been practicing at Binghamton, but that is an option that is available, and we do help each other in that way. Okay, I'm going to look for one more question and then get back to how do you find an ombuds job? And I apologize, I forget that my table that my computer is sitting on is kind of shaky. So if you see the bouncing around, it's not me, it's the table. Okay. Let's see. Yes. So Susan, you mentioned it sounds like there is a verbal agreement, not a written agreement, as in mediation, that is required for confidentiality to kick in. So Susan, the agreement for confidentiality is, I guess you could call it implied. And I say that because the assumption is for confidentiality. So I don't need to say to people, this conversation is confidential. It is assumed confidential unless I'm given permission to be otherwise. So even if I don't say to a person, let's say they call me on the phone, they had spoken with me about something before, they're following up about it. The assumption is that the conversation is confidential. And so it doesn't necessarily have to be overtly stated. I hope that answers your question. All right, let me dip back quickly. Oh, I'm going to take Robin's question.
Thank you very much, Bathabile. I had asked in the chat, are you only speaking with people individually, or do you actually ultimately bring people together to resolve a conflict that they're in, i.e. serve as a mediator?
Yes. So first, in terms of speaking with people, sometimes I'm speaking with individuals, sometimes I'm speaking with groups of people. So the most common example of when I'm speaking with groups of people, it tends to be the executive board of student organizations. Believe it or not, that's who I tend to see more in groups. And so perhaps they're having an issue with, usually it's a member. There's one member who's causing great consternation in the organization. And so they come to me as a group because they are trying to figure out how to address that situation. So I meet with individuals, I meet with people in dyads, I meet with people in groups, who are trying to resolve an issue. But then I also can serve as a mediator. And so I'm sort of I'm the recognized mediator on campus, since I am my office is independent anyway. And so if you're looking for somebody to be impartial in that way, I don't have connections with anybody else, it would make sense that my office be the place. Now, we do also have on campus available a mediation and restorative justice process office that we have an office that provides mediation and restorative justice processes specifically for students. And so I thought that is important as well. In the ombuds profession, it is recognized that it is important that there be multiple options for services for people on campuses or in corporate institutions or wherever it is that the ombuds practice happens. So I encourage my institution to have redundancy in the services that are offered. It's not necessary that I be the only one on campus that can provide mediation, but I am a main resource for mediation.
Great. Thank you so much.
Sure. So let's talk a bit about how one becomes an ombuds and finds an ombuds job. And as I was thinking about this conversation, I was thinking about how I came into the role. I had been thinking, well, I was pretty much fresh out of law school and got into the role, but that's not exactly true. This was the associate ombuds job was my third job since college. And after college, I had a job for about 3 years, I think it was. And then I went to law school for 4 years. And then I worked in the law firm for 2.5 years. And I mentioned that because what I came to understand, let me back up for a second. There has been, in the past few years, quite a bit of a dilemma in the International Ombuds Association and in the ombuds world about how do we get people into the profession. And we have now more and more people graduating with master's degrees in conflict management and dispute resolution who are looking for jobs and really want to serve in the ombuds role. And, for a while I was thinking, well, what's wrong? What's the holdup? Why aren't we getting more of these folks into these roles? And then as I thought about it, it came to me that, this really is not it's not now I'm blanking on the term. It's not an entry-level job. It is a job that reports to the highest level of the organization. So one way of looking at it is that it is a vice president level job. And so when you think about what is required for a person to reach the level of vice president in their organization, how many years of experience is expected for that person to have, what kind of track record they're expected to have. If you're going into the ombuds role in the way that it is best imagined from my perspective, then it is not an entry-level job. It requires, somebody who has been out there in the world and working for quite some time. Where there is more opportunity, I think, is in the associate ombuds roles. And so I would advocate for, and I would encourage others to advocate for more institutions to embrace the importance of having an associate ombuds. And so my first role was as an associate ombuds. Of course, that came after, having about 6 years of work experience and a terminal degree. Now, a terminal degree is not necessary, but perhaps having experience equivalent to a terminal degree would be helpful. So I think in terms of managing expectations, which is one of the core functions of an ombuds, is helping people to manage expectations. in terms of managing expectations around that, it's important to realize that the ombuds job and even the associate ombuds job, these are not entry-level positions. It's important for you to go out there and get experience otherwise first before expecting to be hired. Now, of course, it could happen. I'm not saying that it's not going to happen, and I encourage people to try anyway. But really, think about this as not an entry-level position. In terms of searching for jobs, the two places that are most informative in that regard, I think, are first, there is what's called the Ombuds blog. And if you go to Google and you search Ombuds blog, it will come up. It is maintained by Tom Kawasaki, I believe. Somebody please, I should have had this written down, but if somebody would correct me if I'm wrong. Is it Kowaleski? It's terrible, but somebody please go ahead and let me know. Remind me of his last name. He's been doing this for years, and it's an amazing service that he provides to the Ombuds community. But he will list jobs as they become available. The International Ombuds Association website also has recently included a job board. So there is a jobs board, and you can go to the website of the International Ombuds Association and look there too. I also discovered in doing my research about this that sometimes it helps to change your search terms. So if you're searching for ombuds job, you might be missing a bunch of opportunities, because I find that people are using other terms. For example, conflict management and dispute resolution officer is something that I found out there. So you might want to play around with your search terms and then go to the conventional places like Indeed and the other resources that are available for people to search for jobs. But more than that, I think best of all is to reach out to people who are in practice and develop connections with them. The ombuds profession is still relatively small. So I believe at our last annual conference that was held online, we crossed the 500 participant mark for the first time. So if you think about that, then you have an understanding of how relatively small the ombuds world is. When I started back in 2006, I think that we had around 200 people who would attend our annual conference. And so you pretty literally kind of knew everybody. Even if you perhaps hadn't ever had a conversation with them, you could recognize everybody and you knew their names. So it is a pretty small field, and ombuds are, by temperament, generally speaking, those who enjoy their work, are friendly people, enjoy talking to people and helping them to solve problems. And so I'm sure that folks would be happy for you to reach out and make connections and let them know that you are looking to be an ombuds, and perhaps you're looking for a mentor. So find yourself a mentor. My email address is ombudsman@binghamton.edu if you want to reach out to me, or my first name, Bathabile@binghamton.edu. And so I'd be happy to help you in that regard in terms of finding somebody with whom you could connect, who can also be that ear to the ground for opportunity in the ombuds profession. All right, so I thought that we could do a little bit of a case study to give you a flavor of what it is like to practice as an ombuds. And so we're going to be doing a poll. Here is the scenario. And then I think Nikki's going to post the poll, and I'd love to see what your answers are. So here is the scenario. A student comes to you because they have been accused of academic dishonesty. They are facing expulsion from the university. The student is distraught and irate. The student insists that they are innocent and that the chair of the academic dishonesty committee handling their case is not following the policies and procedures of the academic dishonesty policies as outlined in the student handbook, faculty handbook, and the internal grievance policy of the student's academic program. You look into the student's claims and find that indeed, the chair has taken a direction that deviates from the written policies in just about every way. What do you do? And so I'm going to ask, I think, Nikki to post that poll. And your options are demand that the associate deans, oh, I'm sorry, I forgot to change that. It should be the chair of the Academic Honesty Committee. Demand that they follow their own policies. Do you tell the president and hope that the president demands that they follow their own policies? Encourage the student to insist that the associate deans follow their own policies. All of the above or none of the above. And I'll give about a minute and a half for you to consider your choices and make your decision. Okay, I'll give it about another 30 seconds. All right, I'm going to close the poll. And here are the results. And so I see that it's pretty mixed down there at the bottom of our choices, but I'll start at the top. 2% of you believe that the ombuds should demand that here I said associate deans, it should be chair of the academic committee, follow their own policies. 3% say tell the president and hope the president demands that they follow their own policies. 35% say encourage the student to insist that the associate deans follow their own policies. 21% say all of the above, and 39% say none of the above. All right, so I am curious to hear from the 39% of you who said none of the above. And I'm curious to hear what you would say you would want to happen instead, or what you would suggest would happen instead. And I see the hand here. I don't want to mispronounce your name. I think, is it Tayanda?
Yes, that's correct.
Thank you. Awesome.
I'm very impressed by the way that never happens.
Well, this has made my day. Yes, please tell me about your choice and what supports it.
So I selected all of the above because it seems like it's kind of encouraging everyone to do their part and allows, I guess, more opportunities for things to work out.
Mm-hmm. Okay, right. So you are going to take a broad-based approach and involve everyone who could be involved in the situation.
Yes.
Excuse me. So sorry. Yes. All right. Thank you so much. Janet.
Hello.
Hello.
I really appreciate your clarity and your the distinctions you're making. And as I understand it, the ombudsman or woman, the ombuds is not an enforcer of policy. So that most of those include some kind of enforcement, the choices that were there. And secondly, the ombuds operates under a sense of confidentiality. So it's more empowering the people who come for the discussion to help them see how they can move the conflict out towards who should they talk to, how should they go about it, What kinds of options do they have? And so it's more their job to tell, for example, the president or whatever about these things. So I think those are two aspects.
Yes, well, yes, and I'm glad that you have reminded us that the ombuds is not an enforcer. And so where there is an element of that, or there seems to be an element of that in an option, it would be important for the ombuds to be aware of, what it might look like. As I was training as an ombuds, at Columbia with Marcia, one of the things that she really impressed upon me is that it's not just the actual conflicts of interest that are problematic, but the appearance of a conflict of interest. And so it is very important for the ombuds to act in a way that does not give rise to the appearance of partiality or of advocating for specific results and so forth. So thank you for bringing that up, Janet. Natalie.
Hi.
Hi.
Thank you. I think you mentioned what other options might we suggest.
Mm-hmm.
So I would be curious if the institution has policies that involve grieving such situations.
Mm-hmm.
And therefore I would be looking into researching what policies exist or what actions can the person take as an individual based on what is on record at the institution for that person to do. And then I believe you described the ombuds role as one in which you kind of clarify what options the person has under existing policies and not necessarily empower them or, suggest or demand that they take those actions, but help to clarify and what the options are. So that's what I would be looking for, and then helping the person to understand how they could use those options.
Yes, exactly. Absolutely. And so I would consider that, a very wise course of action, recognizing that it is, important to honor the person's autonomy and self-determination, that it is not for me to tell people what to do, but to provide them with an array of options from which they can choose to find out, what are the policies, and as wide a range of understanding of the policies as possible. So is there a grievance process that the student can take advantage of? So yes, that's all very excellent. Any other answers from folks? Those of you who said, and I closed the poll. Let me see, here we go. So some of you said all of the above. I'd love to hear from someone who said all of the above. I think I kind of did, but is there anybody else who chose all of the above who'd like to chime in? Bob, yes.
Sure. And I haven't been on campus in quite a few years, but I was a Hillel rabbi back then, but I've been a community ombudsperson for a number of years. And often we need to remind those in power, the enforcement folks, what they need to do and how they might be involved in the process. We are not, as you mentioned, I'm not an enforcement person. However, if I need to remind someone in the police department, I remind them. If I need to remind someone in the mayor's office, I remind them. I don't take a stand unless there's a definite stand to be made. And it might be here because there's obvious problems with lines crossed, but you can suggest to them that they take a look at this process and have them do their job as delineated within the enforcement or the communal structure that exists.
Thank you for bringing that up, Bob. I appreciate your answer. It opens up an opportunity then to talk about a little bit of nuance that is present in this specific situation, which is that while the ombuds is not an advocate for a specific result for a specific person, the ombuds is expected to be an advocate for fairness, for civility, and for mutual respect. And when we talk about fairness, we're talking about fairness across the board, including fairness in the process. And so where you find that people are abusing their power, right? So from my perspective, this constitutes an abuse of power in the process, right? Then it shifts my role a little bit in terms of asking me to advocate for fair process. So with this student, I'm not advocating for an outcome regarding whether the student is innocent or not, right? And it's important in understanding what kinds of conversations I'm having with the student. Whether the student did it is not part of my consideration. Where I am focused is on the process itself. Is the process fair? And so if I'm going to be having conversation with administrators, with the chair of the academic dishonesty committee, I'm going to be talking about fairness in the process. And the other, so there's that issue of being an advocate for fairness. And then the other issue has to do with this being a systemic issue, right? So the two places that the ombuds would, in a sense, be able to take an advocacy role is where there is an issue of fairness and there is an issue that is systemic. And in this case, while I may have just one student before me, I have to ask myself, are they doing this all the time? Is this happening to other students as well? I decided to simplify this particular example, but I will say that in reality, there were also questions of discrimination that were involved because of this particular student's identity that made it complicated as well, right? So yes, generally speaking, the Ombuds is not an advocate, but where there is a systemic issue and there is an issue of fairness and abuse of power, there the Ombuds might step out and take a more direct and perhaps overt role. Right?
And if I remember your questions correctly, because they're not up on the screen right now.
Sure.
It was, you are asking the student to be an advocate. You're asking the president to play their role in this process and the others to play their role. So as you correctly said, this is a systemic approach and you look at it. And of course, going back to my own frame of reference and what happens within the context of the communities that I work in, we often are looking at systemic issues. It is never an insular or isolated incident. It is part of a systemic issue that we need to be able to take a very careful and thoughtful look at. And by getting the system involved, the system can then not only correct itself on this particular issue, but future issues as well.
Exactly. Yes. Thank you. I see Erica.
In terms of all of the above, part of the issue was that, like any good academic putting together multiple choice questions, you loaded the words.
Yes.
So demanding
yes,
that the president do X, confronting the chair of the committee. That doesn't make sense. And sadly, the student is not going to be in a position to do much. And so this is where the diplomatic backdoor systemic role of the ombuds comes in, saying to the president, there's something we probably should look at. Saying to the student, here are your rights, but let us think together about how you're going to approach this, because the student is irrespective. I grew up in Massachusetts, irregardless, as they say, which is not really a word, but I love it. The student needs to, while not being told to get a lawyer, needs to figure out the realpolitik of this. And that's where, clearly you've already done some research in order to figure out that the chair is not following process. And that's a very interesting issue about what you do next. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. Appreciate, you're bringing up the, looking at the options, and yes, guilty as charged. I did load it. So the ombuds cannot demand that people do one thing or another, even in this particular situation where it is about fairness and fairness of process and a systemic issue. And it is the one place where an ombuds can take on a more active role, right? But I think it depends on how one interprets the concept of confrontation. So I would say that the ombuds can confront, in a sense, right? And so, speak to the chair of the Academic Honesty Committee and say, very directly, I understand that, there have been these decisions made about how to proceed on this particular case. And I see that they do not follow the policies and the procedures as prescribed in our handbooks and in our documents. And tell me more. So my standard question is, tell me more about that. Please help me understand what's happening here. Right. And this does actually describe a real case. And I spent a number of hours in several conversations speaking to the chair of the Academic Honesty Committee about what the policies are and about what was going on and the choices that were being made and so forth. And I did actually forward the issue, bring the issue up the chain as well. And also talk to the student about how to approach their own advocacy, right? So one of the roles that an ombuds can play is helping people to remain cognizant of addressing these situations in ways that are more likely to be helpful than not, right? So we're not going to blow up the bridge. So we help them find language that is perhaps less likely to be provocative or counterproductive, and help them to figure out how they are going to approach advocating for themselves. But yes, indeed, it is not something that is proper for the ombuds to do, is to take up that role of advocacy. I did, of course, reach out to offices on campus that do have that role, where they can actually overtly advocate on behalf of the student and refer the student to those offices as well, right? So understanding the nuances of the resources of the institution as they're available is really important to the role. Having established rapport with the people who hold those offices in advance of any situation like this arising is also really important, so that you are a colleague, someone whom they can trust, someone to whom they will listen, on the basis of you already having established trust with them, and have already established a reputation as being somebody whom they can rely on to be fair and to be helpful. Okay. All right. So that is the end of my presentation. I am interested in hearing, oh, actually, no, it's not. I'm not done. There's a part 2. And we don't have a poll for this, but I want you to think about it. And I'm interested in seeing people's responses in the chat as well. Okay. And again, this actually happened. So So you've had this situation where, the student has reported to you that the policies and procedures are not being followed by the chair of the Academic Dishonesty Committee. And you've worked with the committee chair and with the various offices and so forth. Later, the chair of the Academic Honesty Committee comes to you in fear that they are being named in a grievance filed by the student. They want to know whether this is true without inadvertently making themselves interesting to the grievance officer. Part of your role is to get information for visitors who ask for it on an anonymous basis. What do you do? Go ahead and write your answer in the chat. Okay, so I will repeat the prompt. So you've gone through all of this process, you're in the midst of this process with the student, appealing the decision, and there are issues with the way that the process has been run. And so the chair of the Academic Honesty Committee comes to you in fear that they are being named in a grievance that the student has filed. They want to know whether this is true without inadvertently making themselves interesting to the grievance officer. In other words, they don't want the grievance officer to know that they're asking. Part of your role is to get information for visitors who ask for it on an anonymous basis. What do you do? Okay, so Noelia says you can't deny or confirm that anyone came to your office to discuss such a matter. So in this case, actually, Noelia, would you mind coming on and clarifying what you're saying?
Hi. So the little bit that I have learned about the ombuds world is that you can't really deny or confirm that anyone came to your office. If anyone may be asking something, you can, let's say, for example, you can say, well, what's your, what do you want to discuss a situation that you're going through, and possibly maybe speak hypotheticals, but not confirm or deny.
Okay. So here's where I think there might be an opportunity for some clarification. I cannot confirm or deny that anybody has come to me about any situation without permission. And so what I didn't say, what I should have said, is that the student, of course, gave me permission to talk to everyone. And so I can acknowledge, and I had already spoken to the chair of the Academic Honesty Committee about this case. So the chair is well aware that I know about this situation, that I have permission to talk with the chair about this situation. And so it is perfectly fine for me to acknowledge that I know the specifics of what they're asking about, right? Erica, you have your hand up.
Yes. I'm curious about what the chair's reaction was when you initially raised the discussion. Because I would expect, given what you've described, a certain amount of pushback from the chair.
So you are tapping into what is really important about the reality of these situations, and sort of describes the limitations of what we can do in a forum like this one. Because the truth of the matter is that the situation is far more complicated than is necessarily presented at the surface. And so the chair had their reasons for going in the direction that they did. And outside the context of, a desire for there to be fidelity and, predictability and reliability in how an institution has, the posture of an institution in terms of its own policies, I could understand why the chair went in the direction that they did. It actually was understandable. However, it wasn't right. You know, it still wasn't right. And so that is where the crux of the conversations would be in terms of confirming, you know, and affirming what the institution's, you know, core orientation is in terms of its own policies. Do we always follow our own policies, or are we an institution that sometimes follows the policies, but other times allows people to just sort of carve their own path, right? So that's the approach, not that blatantly, but that's sort of the approach to the conversation to be had is, you know, what is at stake here if we're taking a direction that deviates from the policies as they're written?
Well, in that case, the grievance flows from what the chair has done.
Yes.
To which some part of my mind is saying to the chair, at least in my head, tough darts, buddy.
And that's certainly what I wanted to say.
I'm sure.
Right?
Sure. Yeah.
But
it's interesting because it poses the internal conflict in your role as ombuds. I mean, you know, that's what I'm sure that's part of why it's here.
And that is why I titled this conversation Ombuds Confidential.
Yeah.
Because it is about, you know, getting down beneath the surface of what, you know, how the role is described and talking about what actually happens, right? So in this situation here, I have somebody coming to me requesting aid, and this is a person that I have struggled with, not overtly, but in my own heart. You know, I have struggled, but it is my job to provide everybody with the same level of service, regardless of how I feel about them. And so in this case, what I did was to fulfill the request of the chair. And what happens then is that if I'm doing it on an anonymous basis, I will call the person who's in charge of the office and I will say, you know, I have a policy question for you. How would somebody know if they are being named in this kind of a grievance? You know, what specific, and that's the answer that the question that I ask. And when I get the answer, then I convey the answer to the question, to the person who asked it of me, no matter how I feel about them.
So the question is, how would they know, and not, are they being grieved?
Yes, right. So that they suspected on the basis, so let me back up for a second. Of course, if a grievance is filed, the office of that where the grievance is filed is going to investigate, which means that they're going to be calling up people and asking questions.
Yeah.
And just because they're asking questions doesn't mean that you are the focus of the grievance. And so this person wanted to know, am I the focus of this grievance? And so the way that you ask the question without revealing who the person is that you ask the person in charge of the grievance office, how would one know if they are the focus of the grievance? Right. And so that's the approach that we took.
Very interesting. Thank you.
You're welcome. Lorna, I see your hand.
Thank you. This is all fascinating. So part of what I'm wondering, would your office have known whether a grievance was filed or was the subject of that? Or would have had to ask that question?
I would have to ask.
Okay.
Right.
And then part of me wonders, when you relayed that scenario, I often say as a mediator, just because the parties throw you the ball doesn't mean you have to catch it. Right. And the reflective questions like what, and to try and engage this person in, I don't know if you would ever say, if you didn't know, and it sounds like honestly you wouldn't know. I don't know whether you are the focus of the grievance or not, but it sounds like you're concerned. Do you want to talk through that with me to try and get at what their concerns are?
Uh,
Because it seems to me that as the ombuds, you can do a lot. If this becomes public or on the campus or whatever, right? Sounds to me like all the avenues of the behind the scenes, how you can try and help the parties or without it becoming a big mess. Although sometimes I guess it needs to, right? And that's that's where it can get dicey.
Right. If it becomes a big mess, then it's out of my hands. Right. So part of the job is to stay out of the mess. Okay. I've heard other ombuds say this, and I know for some people they might have, sort of question with the language. I want to acknowledge that right off the bat. But one of the ways of remaining sane in the job, it's really important to maintain a distinction between what is yours and what is theirs. And so the saying is, not my circus, not my monkeys. Okay. Not my circus, not my monkeys. So it's very important to recognize what is yours and what is not yours. In this particular situation, I didn't feel as though I really had an option of saying no without being partisan. Because the reason I would be saying no to this person is because how I felt about them, not because I could or couldn't help them. So it was within my role to ask these kinds of questions. I do this all the time. People come to me and they are afraid of getting in trouble if they go directly to wherever it is and ask the question. So they ask me to ask the question on an anonymous basis. It's part of the service that I provide.
Okay.
Right. And so for me to say, I don't know, it doesn't, of course I can find out. And if I decide not to do that, then I feel as though I am violating, my role. Right.
Can you share how this all ended up? How it all can you share how it all worked out or anything?
I honestly don't feel that I can do that.
Okay. No,
I'm
obviously not asking you to breach any confidentiality, but
right, exactly. Yeah.
Right.
So just because of the specifics of the situation, I don't feel that I can go into that. I have tried as much as possible to make sure that if anybody wants to go digging, please don't come digging. But if anybody wants to go digging, they won't be able to figure out who it is. It's a large institution. We have many divisions and many schools, so you wouldn't be able to necessarily identify which one it is. But I feel uncomfortable about getting into the specifics of how things wrapped up.
Yeah, understood.
Thank you. Harvey. And I know we've got a couple, well, actually, before we get into your question or comment, Harvey, I know we've got just a couple of minutes left before 10. So I want to check in with Maria. I know that I'm available for about 30 more minutes if you want to continue the conversation. But I do want to let Maria chime in on that.
Yeah, we are literally at that point where we wrap up. Thank you, Bathabile, for a phenomenal morning. This has been incredibly informative and inspirational. I thank you on behalf of all of us. And thank you if you can hang around for, you said, another 30 minutes or so. What we will do at this point is stop the recording because the breakfast then is officially concluded, and have a continuation of what we call informal networking for those of you who would like to hang around to chat, to ask questions informally. Please feel free to do so. I ask you to be brief so that Bathabile can get to everyone. There have been a lot of questions in the chat. So it might be easier if everyone raises their hand and is very brief so that Bathabile can process the questions very quickly. So with that, Nikki, are you?
If I could just jump in for a second. Thank you, Maria. Bathabile, it's Chuck. I have to run to another meeting, but I just wanted to thank you very much. This was a great presentation, and I wanted to thank all of the participants. It was they were a great set of questions. Thanks everybody.
Yep, thank you, Chuck. I know he speaks on behalf of all of us who are part of the organizing group here. And I see that Matthew has also thanked everyone, and Nikki and Emily. Thank you so much. And with that, we are ending the recording. It is now 10 o'clock.
I will end the recording now and we can continue with the informal after hours breakfast roundtable. So thank you all, and I hope to see you all again next month. And thank
And
you,
next month
Bathabile.
is Sharon Press from Hamline, Mitchell Hamline Law School in Minnesota.
All right, thank you.
Okay, so with